Students, today we are going to study the portrait of a lady, and it is written by Khushwant Singh. Now, overview. The portrait of a lady gives a vivid account of Khushwant Singh's relationship with his grandmother. In his association spanning about 20 years, there were many ups and downs, and their friendship was the most intimate when the author lived with his grandmother in his native village. But when the author's father was posted in a city, his link with his grandmother weakened and then snapped. Though they shared the same room, the grandmother and the grandson became strangers. She did not like his new English education. However, she still loved him. When the author was going abroad for higher education, she came to see him off at the station. She was still active when he came back after 5 years. One day she left her daily routine and started beating the drum for hours together. In the same evening she breathed her last. Now the summary. So what is the overview? Like in the beginning of this chapter, in the beginning of this chapter, the intimacy of grandson and grandmother was very good. But as the time passed, they became strangers for each other. Why? Because grandson was getting higher education as well as he was growing up. Now let's discuss a summary of the chapter. The portrait of a lady is a pen portrait of author's grandmother. Khushwant Singh has drawn a vivid picture of his relationship and attachment with his grandmother. He describes the ups and downs that took place in their relationship. With the passage of time, the intimacy between them were getting low, and these relations were conditioned by changes in time and the values. Earlier, Khushwant Singh was giving so much value to his relationships, but later on he was giving values to the education. And the author's grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. She had always been short, fat, and slightly bent, as is seen among the senior citizens. Her face was a crisscross of wrinkles. It was quite clear that she had stayed at the same age for 20 years. She used to wear white spotless clothes befitting the old people. As a particular Indian old woman, she was always telling the beads of her rosary. Her lips always moved in inaudible prayers. You have seen the old people that they used to say prayers each and every time, that is inaudible. We can't hear those prayers. And same was with Khushwant Singh's grandmother. She also used to speak prayers that were inaudible to all of them. And the grandmother used to wake the author up in the morning and get him ready for the school. She would fetch his wooden slate, an earthening pot, and a red pen, and tie them all in a bundle and give it to him. Now, his breakfast consisted of a thick stale chapati with a little butter and sugar spread on it. The grandmother accompanied the author to his school because the school was attached to the temple. She was very fond of feeding the village dogs with stale chapatis. In the school, the priest taught the alphabet and the morning prayer. The grandmother used to sit inside the temple and read the scriptures. After the school was over, they used to come back home, and they came back home together. Now the second phase of life started when the author's parents were comfortably settled in the city and they sent for the author and his grandmother. This was a turning point in their relationship. Whose relationship? Author and his grandmother's relationship. No doubt they shared the same room, but the gap between them was widening because of the author's admission in an English school. The grandmother no longer accompanied him to the school. Since there were no dogs in the streets, she took to feeding the sparrows in the country yard in their city house. The author was taught Western science and music, much to the displeasure of the grandmother. Why? Because grandmother didn't like Western culture and the music also, and she was distressed to know that there was no teaching about God and the holy books. The author's admission in a university further widened the charm between them, and he was given a separate room. Thus, the common link of friendship was snapped. It was over. The grandmother accepted her seclusion with resignation. Now she was busy in spinning the wheel. The author got admission in a foreign country for higher studies. Author thought that his grandmother would be upset, but she was calm and composed. She displayed no emotion when the author left for his destination. After 5 years, when he came back home, she was there to receive him at the station. Even on the first day of his arrival, her happiest moments were in the company of the sparrows. But in the evening, a change came over. She did not pray. Every evening she used to pray, but that evening she did not pray at all. She collected the women of the neighborhood, got a drum, and started singing songs welcoming the warriors. The next day she was taken ill. She told the members of her family that her end was near, that she was about to die. She did not want to waste her time in talking to others. She lay peacefully in bed, praying and telling the beads of her rosary. But suddenly her lips stopped moving and rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. A peaceful pallor spread over her face and she was dead. In the evening, when her dead body was taken out for cremation, thousands of sparrows had collected on the floor to pay their homage to their patron. The sparrows did not chirp. The author's mother threw some crumbs of bread for them to eat, but they flew away quietly as a mark of respect. Now, if we see the chapter as in a single sentence, like we can say, chapter in a nutshell. So, what can we say about that? We can say, author couldn't believe grandmother and grandfather could have ever been young and married. How was his grandfather? Grandfather looked too old in portrait to have ever had a wife and children. And what about the village? Grandmother woke up author, got him ready, sang out her prayers, hoping he would learn, prepare his wooden slate, accompany to school, waited in temple and read scriptures while author studied, and fed the dogs stale chapatis. And how was the grandmother? Grandmother was fat, short, slightly bent, terribly old, wrinkled. And she always had rosary in one hand. She was beautiful and tranquil like winter landscape in mountains. Face revealed peace and contentment. Couldn't believe grandmother was once young and pretty. Spotless white dress, silver locks. So this was all about this chapter. Now let's discuss questions. Question number 1. You have to write character sketch of the author's grandmother. And second question is, what was the turning point in the relationship between author and his grandmother? This is the end of the chapter. I hope you all understand the chapter, important points of the chapter, as well as the characteristics of the author and his grandmother.